Ahoy! There is a brand new MMO coming out this month, and you may actually know about this, but you also may have forgotten that you know about this. The game in question is The Day Before, which had such a weird path that some people are questioning if it's even real at all. So let's dig into that. But first, I'd like you to pause the video and check your Steam wishlist, if you're somebody who uses the Steam wishlist at all. Because it wouldn't be surprising if The Day Before is on your Steam wishlist, and it also wouldn't be surprising if you completely forgot about that fact. This was the most wishlisted game on Steam until recently. There was a lot of hype following early trailer material, and then a lot of radio silence and drama. But before we get into that, a little bit more about The Day Before as a game. They describe this as a post-apocalyptic MMO survival game, which kind of makes the whole idea pretty obvious. You're in a world with other players, of course, there are zombies, and you kind of scavenge stuff. You have the typical basic survival mechanics, like needing to get food and drinks and so on, and you interact with both other players as well as mobs. The setting is the US East Coast that was hit by a deadly pandemic, and you will be rebuilding the community and bring supplies to the survivors while you're out scavenging. The devs behind the game are Fntastic, and the other games that they're known for are The Wild 8 and Propnight. And both of these games have positive receptions to some degree, but both of them have major complaints as well, especially when it comes to the maintenance of the game. They are being called unfinished, or that they're just no longer being updated, so basically they were dropped when they were no longer making immediate profits. That is of course a huge red flag when it comes to what they're going to do with The Day Before. On the other hand, it is worth pointing out that many studios kind of need to operate like that because most games end up not being profitable long term, and many games simply die off because of that. But even with that in mind, it's by far not the only red flag, so let's get a bit into the development history here. First of all, there was a trademark dispute over the name of the game. Apparently some other person, an individual, had claimed that name for themselves, and it took them ages to get the name back, and that stalled publishing the game at least. Not necessarily development, but something behind the scenes. Along with that, there was a move to Unreal 5, which I would say is a good thing in itself, which also further stalled development. But there were other things that were just weird. For example, there was a post where they asked for volunteers to work on the game. Some people are speculating that this may be a mistranslation, but either way it just comes across very questionable. After not showing any gameplay for a very long time, there was eventually a 10-minute gameplay reveal, which was met with very negative feedback because it looked very plain and there was really not much going on. You'll see some of that throughout this video. I'll show some of the clips from that. It's really not very exciting at all. And then last but not least, there was a recent announcement from them ahead of the release, which has some of the usual fluff, I would say, but then has this section addressed towards people who didn't believe in us, and I'd like to read you some of that. We made this game for you too. We accept any kind of criticism and don't hold a grudge against you. Before we continue moving forward together, kindly allow us to note a few things. Please forgive us for not doing the best marketing and teasers. We learn something new and improve ourselves every single day. Please don't accuse us of scamming. That is not true. We didn't take a penny from anyone. Please don't accuse us of asset flip. That's not true also. Our team worked day and night for over 5 years to make our dream a reality. Please don't underestimate our work. It wasn't easy. We are like you, we worked hard. And we are incredibly happy that our game will finally see the light of day for everyone to explore. I don't know about you, but to me personally this comes across somewhat defensive. I can understand that they need to explain certain things, but it's kind of a bit over the top that this is the longest segment in the entire post. This just comes across as "to all my haters" or something along those lines. So yeah, it just reads weird. Maybe this is a translation issue, but then again, if you're releasing a big game, you can also afford to have someone properly translate your text for you and properly proofread that and word it in a way that doesn't sound so strange, if that's a priority for you. If you made it this far and you're interested in what happens with this game and other MMOs, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell. I will be talking about that more in the next days. Now, another thing they're announcing here is that everyone will get access at the same time. Generally, this is something I really like. I dislike the current culture of having 3 stages of access to the game. First journalists, then maybe really big YouTubers, and then the rest of all of us peasants together. But that isn't necessarily a good sign here, because it also means that they're not showing anyone anything about the game beforehand, So if the game isn't very good, you won't get any warnings ahead of the launch day where some people may already have bought the game. Speaking of launch day, here is the launch map, and there's the global launch here on December 7th. However, there are some places where the game releases in the AM, and in those places it will actually release on December 8th. So I'm pretty sure this is a global release everywhere around the same time at least, because I can see on my Steam page in Australia that for me it'll release on the 8th and not on the 7th, so the 5 AM is actually one day later, and therefore lining up in time. As tradition in this genre, the game will launch as early access. Initially it will cost $39 and later on it'll cost $49. The server cap is yet to be announced, but we know that the max group size for players is 4. That also makes it hard to say what the interpretation of an MMO will be in this case, because these days a lot of games like to label themselves as MMOs, but then they aren't really much of an MMO at least, and more of a small scale group thing. But they do say that PvP is the focus of the game. The heart of the game lies within the interactions and experiences of the players themselves, which could also be a flowery way of saying there isn't a lot of content and engaging with other players will be the main content. Aside of the PvP and PvE component, you also have access to a cozy ranch safe house where you can decorate. This cannot be rated, so this is not like Rust, for example, and there's also no base building in that sense that you actually build an entire structure. You can just put nice decorations in there. You can enter this, and so can your group, and that's it. I don't think that's inherently bad. I don't think every survival game needs to be the same in every aspect, so this could work out, but this only works if there's enough player engaging content in other areas to make up for it. An interesting mechanic are the traits. Credit to Visual Vibrance on Reddit, who made a list of all of them to show us how exactly this works. Of course, these are subject to change, but what the system in general allows you to do is have certain positive traits where your character is better at certain things, but in return you have to choose negative traits to offset the advantage that you get somewhat. So for example, you could specialize on quick looting or quick weapon swapping, but in return you nerf your sniping ability by holding your breath shorter while you're scoping, or similar mechanics, just any kind of upsides and downsides that you can mix together. I'm sure there will be some developing meta over time, but I do think it is interesting because it kind of allows you to design your character more as a class of some sort. All in all, I think there are a lot of reasons to be very skeptical about this release. Again, I like that they are hiding some things, but in this particular case, I'd rather they showed us something that is worth showing, so we could actually see if this is a game worth playing. As they are not doing that, I would not recommend buying this game immediately, or if you do, at least keep in mind that on Steam you can refund within the first 2 hours if the game is terrible. I will be trying out the game because even if it's a bad game, it'll at least make for good content in that case. So if you're interested, or maybe on the fence, or maybe you just want to have a good laugh about it, then consider subscribing so you'll see my video about it. My hopes are not very high, but usually the games that I'm hopeful for fail miserably, so maybe they'll just pull a reversal on that, and because my hopes are so low, the game would actually end up being good. Who knows? Huge thanks to everyone on Patreon for supporting this video, and thank you for watching. Duke Sloth, out.